Friday's ago.
He's gonna lose people. Well, I don't think you can't be vaccinated medically.
Well, no, here's the thing. I have a heart problem, but my family doctor said I can.
That's
It's my heart. It hurts. But you know something? What I feel like is they're criminalized. They said that could be a fine if you're like working with somebody and you know, I can see this. They said they could find somebody when it's $1,000 for every month.
because
So they're making this pretty good.
see, I'll lose Scott.
Right.
I lose Scott.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You know what Dennis said? He was very passionate. But he said it's using some kind of colossal law.
Hold on.
That would be the one.
Okay, so we got this.
This too.
So I don't know.
Here. I got one of those.
You got two of those?
I got one of these.
I want one.
Oh, okay.
Because I know it just come up today that they deny getting rid of the health care. Yeah, it comes through one of the afternoon things.
Where they're going to start funding
Crazy. See, I'm down to Payable right now. I don't know. I'm not going to keep going.
And you want to know something? Sewer worker. It's a place that's not particularly close. It's like an hour away. But they're starting to play slow. What the heck?
Coming this budget, stuff coming up with races. I'm not going to keep people. Gotta do something.
And it's so good that there were places that would offer like $2,000 bonus or something.
Well, they'll give me a bonus right now. So $3 an hour. But I don't know. I gotta get some.
By the way, I need to ask you I would like to because the idea has a sewer. I would like to and 2 days when you get all your credits, or sewer license.
We want to be heard.
Keep his license.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have a gavel tonight, but we're going to call the meeting to order.
No problem.
If everybody would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to be using mics tonight, particularly if you do have a mask on, which you're more than welcome to do, although they are not required. I do ask that anytime you're using a mic, and this goes for the board too, please speak as loud as I'm speaking, just so we can all hear, because I know it's hard to hear with the mask on. All right, moving right along. Payroll warrants, October 8th, 2021 and October 15th, 2021. Do I hear a motion to approve? Moved by Terry. Seconded. 'Seconded by Pam. Any discussion or questions?
Second.
All right, moving right along. Payroll warrants, October 8th, 2021 and October 15th, 2021. Do I hear a motion to approve? Moved by Terry. Seconded by Pam. Any discussion or questions? everyone. Do I hear a motion? Moved by Terry. Seconded by Pam. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Pam, are you? Thank you. Unanimous. Moving down to number 3, approval of the minutes of October 5th. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve.
Been moved by Terry, seconded by Pam. Any discussion, edits, corrections?
That's why I was looking at our editor over there.
Can you-
That's why I was looking at our editor over there. I wanted to know if Kim had read everything and it was okay. Thank you.
Okay, it's all right? Okay.
Under new business, should that be Rob Lolly? Instead of Rick Bitter?
Yeah.
Wastewater treatment plant manager.
What number, new business on,
10D. The wastewater treatment plant manager explaining.
Yes.
the generators. Should be Rob
right
Lolly.
here, bottom of page 2. That should be Rob. Bottom of page 2, under 10D. Yep. Thank you.
And under 11, talks about Aaron, but it doesn't say what Aaron is. For title, I don't know. So that's actually in there.
Yes, we should add Aaron Bean. You see what it is? Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, calling for a vote. All those in favor with the corrections? Okay. Somebody needs to do that, right? I can. Okay, the second has been withdrawn.
I have to withdraw my motion.
Yes.
My motion, may I make a new motion?
Yes.
Motion is I move to approve minutes as amended.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we do not have any special presentations or awards. We do not have any committee appointments. Now we will get into our public hearing for the special town meeting warrant articles. I'll entertain a motion to enter into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Public hearing is opened at 6:10 p.m. I would invite anyone who would like to ask questions, speak about any of the articles, to make your way to the microphone. Please do make sure to identify yourself so we can get you in the minutes. Okay.
Ed Paul Warrants, yes. I'd like to make some comments relative to Article 2. Article 2 is the Shelton Town vote to appropriate an amount not to exceed $55,000 from the capital reserve account for purchase of new police cruisers. We may not realize it, but as time goes on here, our police department has been responding to an increasing number of calls. This month's report in your package has the calls for September at 344. That's an average of 11 a day. And they don't all happen in a row. Sometimes they're 2 or 3 at a time. The oldest cruiser that we have is spending more and more time on service. It's costing us more and more in maintenance costs. From my point of view, our police department must have equipped EMTs to provide the services we expect. My recommendation is that the voters of this desk vote yes to this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Anyone else wish to speak? Any
article?
Any article on the warrant.
This deals with Article 4. Shall the town authorize and delegate the board of selectmen to negotiate and enter into a long-term agreement with the Maine Art Gallery to use the Academy building on Warrant Street for a period not to exceed 20 years or on terms acceptable to the board of selectmen? I've got a number of questions about this article, and depending on how the chair would like me to proceed, I can ask all the questions at once or one at a time and try to get some answers. You decide what your preference is.
One at a time, if you don't mind.
Okay. As far as I know, we've been dealing with the Maine Art Gallery using this building for many years. And I don't know that we've had any issues with that. But I don't know what the current agreement is. Can you enlighten us as to what the current agreement is? Is it a one-year thing, a 5-year thing, or, 5 years?
It's always been in terms of 5 years.
It's a 5-year term. And what is the cost to Maine Art Gallery to use this building? $1 a year. My next question, I'm not sure is exactly that. Is that the question is the town benefiting from this current arrangement and at $1 a year? And I guess I'd be hard impressed to see that there is a benefit. My concern is that I don't believe that in the current agreement compensate the town with the equivalent of whatever property taxes we might be getting had we sold the building. I would think that at least that agreement should cover that kind of cost, so that the town is at least breaking even. Not having it on the property rolls versus the art gallery, I think there should be an adequate cost involved. The article speaks to a long-term agreement, and I was kind of surprised to see that word rather than lease contract. And so I was wondering if there were any other aspects, scope of that agreement that I'm not aware of. Is it simple dollar for use, or are there other conditions involved in that agreement?
So the current contract, current lease, is a page and a half. It doesn't really say a whole lot. The proposed contract is 14 pages, which is much more comprehensive than what the lease is now. Now, mind you, this is not a done deal. I had a draft contract drawn up. It has to go to the town vote instead of paying a lot of money to attorneys now. I've decided to wait until the town says, yes, we want to pay this, or we don't. Because if they don't, then I don't want to have to waste that money. But the draft agreement is much more comprehensive than the current. And you're welcome to. I'll have you send copies of those.
Oh, with that, I could probably cut some of my comments short. Well, my concern is that from my perspective, the authority to enter into a contract with another agency belongs to the voters. In this case, the board is asking the voters to give them that authority, and yet the voters will not have the knowledge of what's in this 14-page agreement to determine whether that's acceptable to them or not. So in this case, without knowing the details, and I really hope to share those with the voters before the board decides to accept this or not, I recommend that we vote no on this article. I really don't know what I'm voting on. And I think it's, like I say, people's authority to accept or reject this kind of contract. Thank you.
Any other comment? Peter?
Good evening, Peter Wells, from the Seminary Committee. Article 3 speaks about grading access to the ancient cemetery. respect to the entry plan itself, there's been a lot of verbiage in the paper in the past months as far as how exorbitant this entryway is. And it's really a modest entryway with a simple metal archway, granite steps leading down into the cemetery itself. There is no access now that's accessible for people to visit the cemetery itself. And it's basically a sign of respect to the people that live there. So I hope that the town will consider this as a nice alternative, a nice addition to an ancient cemetery that is well known for town people and for visited each day. The people there deserve a sense of entry, a sense of enclosure with fence. As well. I hope you will.
Yep.
I'd like to speak about Article 3 as well. A point of qualification, my name's James Koshin. I've been working as a senior manager of historic preservation, cultural resources issues at the National Parks, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, Mount Vernon, and other organizations. I also was a member of the Wisconsin Historic Preservation Commission during 2016-2017. I'm very concerned about both the gateway and the proposed fencing, but related to Article 3, the gateway. It's an arched gateway that is completely incompatible with the type of form of cemetery that we have in the ancient cemeteries of the National Register of Historic Places. It's colonial and federal style. All the gravestones, the layout, the entire layout of the cemetery is very early American. Iron fencing did not metal fencing did not come in vogue in the United States until the late 19th century. And it was a primarily urban adaptation, especially related to large urban cemeteries. Most of the smaller towns, rural cemeteries, everything throughout New England, and especially in Maine, picket fence, picket gated, or stone. The primary reason historically for putting fences around the cemetery was not an attractive border. It was to keep livestock and other animals out of the cemetery and to prevent knocking over of monuments and stones. We're talking about putting an open arched gateway, which is completely, again, it doesn't even come into cemetery architecture until the late 19th century, so it's completely incompatible with why our cemetery was put in the National Register. Number two, there is no gate inside of that archway. So there's been all this discussion earlier in the year about keeping stray dogs and things out of the cemetery. How does this accomplish at $50,000, keeping stray dogs out of our cemetery? And as to the cost structure, I agree with our former selectman, Ed. $50,000 or more, or 35 to 55, whatever it might be, is a rather expensive outlay of taxpayer money when it actually is just in a modern sense of aesthetics as opposed to historical compatibility. If we still had historic preservation ordinance, and if we still had that in place, and any other town in this country that has a preservation ordinance would reject this design and reject aluminum fence as well, because you're supposed to replace in kind. I've been through all the historic records related to fences around cemeteries in this town, and I've surveyed all the historic photographs in a number of archives, including at our town library. It's always been a picket wooden fence. So by just proper historic preservation things, we should approaches, we should respect that and follow in kind, replace in kind. Thank you.
think the last time I saw you was last May. Carrie Hadley, gallery manager for Maine Art Gallery. Great to see you all, and congratulations on Schooner Fest and everything else that's happened. I want to update you basically on what's happened at the gallery since we spoke and where we are and why we still are very pleased to hear that we can possibly move ahead with determining a new lease for the gallery. We had this summer an unprecedented amount of visitors. We had 1,300 visitors to the gallery over the 6 months we were open. As I wrote the last grant, I had wonderful letters from users of the gallery who wrote about how the gallery is a piece of culture, a piece of entertainment, and a piece of education for the town. We love the space. It's perfect for our needs. It's not perfect for everybody. It's funky if you really look at it, but it's served us well. And as you know, we'd like to move ahead and start addressing some serious structural needs of the building. I did go ahead. I had come to you to ask for your assistance in partnering with us and giving us a longer-term lease before I applied for the Belvedere Historic Trust Grant, knowing that if we didn't have that, we would have a less likely chance of receiving the grant. Well, I was a bit too optimistic, I know, because now I see that, again, it just takes a while to affect change in all of our towns, but we did not get the grant. And as with the Davis Family Foundation grant that the gallery wrote last year, David Pope was involved with that. We were turned down. They give you specific reasons. The two specific reasons were the same for the Belvedere grant as for the Davis. It was ownership of the building or a long-term lease and some amount of money from the town and the gallery towards the project. So for instance, we requested $16,500 for water mitigation and eve repair. I think if, the gallery could have chipped in a couple of thousand and the town for maintenance reserve a couple of thousand, then we're going to have 15,000, and additional funds for the building. So we're still where we were. We're still really hopeful that the townspeople, the taxpayers of Wisconsin, in my mind, if the taxpayers had the building and had to pay for all the structural repairs, we want to go ahead and apply for grant after grant after grant once we have our foundation in place. And again, depending on the building, you could spend $200,000, you could spend $300,000, you could spend $400,000. So we really want to get the ball rolling. David Pope has done a fabulous job of being kind of an ancillary of all kinds of estimates. We know exactly what has to happen. He knows the good vendors and service people. So we're just rearing to go, and we're very hopeful that the taxpayers and the citizens of Wisconsin will back this. And we love the idea, and we're happy to pursue the idea that we'd also be, looking at all the historic structures when it came to maintenance reserve funds or making a plan. And I know, Dennis, I have to thank all of you for being so receptive to our wanting to discuss this and see what would happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
First up, you had mentioned that your grant was rejected. One of the reasons was because they expected the balance back, or they wanted back the funds against their grant.
Yes.
We have the public speak to the board of selectmen and not to that.
I believe she said to contribute. I don't think it was a match, is that correct? Yes, the town to contribute
That's
some.
expected of town. Town is a government entity. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm trying to get clarification.
Can you state the question again?
I'm asking if the granting agency or foundation specifically said the town as a government entity needed to contribute to a project. It's highly unusual in my experience, so I'm trying to get clarification on that. One.
Okay, could I ask you to come up and address that question?
So they didn't say specifically the town, the gallery. They say that some amount of funds should be put forward by the people, requesting the money. But at the same time, they also say that partnerships get a lot more attention and a lot more receptivity to a grant than an individual organization. So again, both because the town does own the building and does, have some capital reserve funds that we've discussed, but it basically we're saying my point was, if we just put in a little bit, we stand to gain a lot. It doesn't necessarily even have to be the town.
Does that clarify the question?
And that Bob is probably the case. I have no problem against the long-term lease, but I am opposed to vote. I'm opposed. I feel we should vote no at the coming election against this article, primarily because we're not far enough along. I'm delighted to learn that Dennis, our wonderful town manager, has put together a draft new agreement, and I'm very hopeful about that. And I really applaud the Maine Art Club for all the wonderful work they've done in retrieving themselves and moving forward over the past few years. However, I'm very uncomfortable voting on this issue, not knowing what the parameters of the agreement are and what responsibilities of both parties will be, and whether or not the board even accepts this agreement and it allows Dennis to move it forward with the lawyers, and whether or not Meg agrees to it on this end. So I think it's premature right now. And there are, once we know what the parameters of the agreement are, it should be a quid pro quo. I've read these things in the National Park Service with partner organizations where we lend out historic structures, gave historic structures in long-term leases. And in return, the tenant, typically a not-for-profit, but sometimes even for-profit agencies, were responsible for all costs, all care of that structure during the period. And in addition, before anything was done, they still had to go through the owner, in this case the town, to make sure everything was done in terms of preservation standards. But I hope the town is adopting, as the Secretary of the Interior's 106 preservation standards, to make sure everything is done to the highest level that this National Register property deserves. So thank you. I hope we can push this off until we know what the town is really proposing to do with the academy and the Maine Art Gallery. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter?
One more quick comment regarding Article 3. Funding from this for the ancient cemetery entrance comes from sale of cemetery lots. This reserve account is basically from the cemetery lots, not raising any taxes. It's not taxpayer dollars. It's money that we have in hand. So I just want to make that known.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Gentleman right here.
Good evening. My name is Richard Reese. I'm the newest member of the board of the Maine Art Gallery, and honored to be part of it. I would take the perspective that what we're really looking at in Article 3 is the vote of confidence. The vote of confidence in selectmen and in their judgment to continue a relationship that has existed for over 65 years. You're the longest, we have been the only tenant of Red Brick School, or the old Academy building, since its 150th anniversary of its construction. And we're looking forward down the line to still be a tenant when the building is 225 years old, and we'll have been there 75 years. We think that the history of our relationship of 13 consecutive 5-year leases is a miraculous kind of relationship, and one that demonstrates that our stewardship of the building for the benefit of the artist community, those who are interested in learning about art, and for those interested in preserving the building as a living entity. We all know that when we close up a building and we go away and it's not being used, that it deteriorates in an accelerated manner. And we have